They never need to raise their voices. Silence is sharp enough when it's chosen for you. The message blinked once. Just a photo and one line from Rachel Connors. Maddie looked stunning. At the housewarming there was no invitation. No question, not even a casual, "Were you there?" because the answer was obvious. The photo loaded as if it knew it shouldn't. The porch wrapped around like the ones I'd circled in catalogues. White lights wound through cedar beams. A blush-coloured sign hung over the door. Welcome home. Maddie and Caleb Madeline stood beneath it. Hair curled, smile easy. She wore the floral dress I once left folded on her bed when she forgot to pack for a trip. Margaret held a glass of champagne behind her, slightly out of focus, but unmistakably present. In the next image, Maddie posed by the staircase, the one with the open baluster design I'd saved to my someday folder. Another shot showed the kitchen with the soft, close drawers and the gold-brushed faucet. I remembered the model number. I locked the screen, then opened it again. No missed calls, no calendar invites, no RSVP requests, not even one of Margaret's clipped messages, "Bring napkins." I searched housewarming in my messages, then Caleb, then address. Nothing. I opened the group thread. My last message from 12 days ago still sat unanswered. Has the loan approval cleared yet? The group name had changed. My name no longer appeared in the list. I scrolled through email folders. Mortgage transfer inspection. I'd labelled them all. There it was. The final deed. I hadn't seen this version before. Page 2. Owners of record Margaret Whitman and Madeline Whitman. I read it again. Once more with the brightness turned up. I turned the screen sideways. The names didn't move. The tea I had poured earlier had cooled. A faint ring marked the coaster, and the mug, a white ceramic with a crack near the handle, tipped ever so slightly on the uneven base. I turned it slowly until the fracture aligned with my palm. Margaret didn't answer the phone. James did barely. The call rang once. Then a message. "There's no need for drama, Claire." Not a word more. Not about how my name was erased. Not about the savings I transferred monthly for 4 years, because shared property makes sense if we're all living there. Not even about the draft agreement James reviewed, the one that once read, shared title Claire and Margaret Whitman. It now belonged to someone else entirely. I opened the banking app. The joint account under Margaret's name, supposedly for convenience, was down to $11.30. The last major transaction aligned perfectly with the down payment. Memo line, transfer to Whitman Fletcher, escrow. Signature, not mine. I didn't call again. I found the envelope marked House, Final File, and slid out the old drafts. I unfolded the version I'd sent James months ago, highlighted sections, margin notes, initials. My name was still there, typed plainly at the top. I'd written it carefully, Claire E. Whitman. I printed the new deed, drew a thin line beneath their names, folded the page once and placed it into a plain file folder marked Keep. In the drawer beneath the sink, past expired coupons and old batteries, I found a note in my handwriting, proof of contribution. Keep copy. Don't forget, it was clipped to a deposit receipt from 2 years ago. I left it where it was. I sat down again, the weight of the mug warm against my skin now, though the tea had gone bitter. The rim had a small chip, not sharp enough to cut just enough to notice. The voice I hadn't heard in years floated up. Eleanor's. Not a warning, not a question. Just something she once whispered while folding laundry. They won't leave marks, Claire. They'll just forget to write you in. I turned the phone face down. A notification blinked again. Maddie's story, muted by default, still managed to appear. She stood in front of the fireplace. Caleb's hand brushed her shoulder. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't save anything. I didn't text Rachel back to ask who was invited or whether Margaret had mentioned me. The answers weren't missing. They were chosen. In the family I was born into, the omissions were never accidents. They were designs. I opened the family chat again and stared at the blank space where my name used to sit among the thread. I didn't type. I didn't try to rejoin. I held the mug up to eye level. The crack was fine, almost decorative now, like an old vein in porcelain, a fracture long settled unlikely to spread, but unfit for heat. I set it down gently and placed both hands on the table. There wasn't going to be an apology. No correction. Just absence, tender, deliberate, and complete. And I knew better than to ask for room where the floor had already been pulled away. Some people confuse stillness with acceptance. I once worked 3 years straight without a real break. No vacations, no long weekends, no calls sent to voicemail. I packed lunches into the same square container, marked dates on a wall calendar I never replaced. Every paycheck came with a line already spoken in my head. It's for the house. Margaret said it often, not as gratitude but as punctuation. Don't overthink it, Claire. We all pitch in. It's for the house. I nodded every time, not because I believed her, but because nodding made things smoother, easier, less noticeable. When Maddie turned 16, I moved into the small back bedroom so she could have the one with better windows. Margaret folded my bedsheets for the move and left them at the foot of the cot like a nurse preparing discharge. She needs the sunlight for her concentration. And you're barely here anyway. I didn't say I still read at night. I didn't mention the crack in the paneling or the outlet that sparked if I plugged in both lamp and heater. I just packed a smaller box. During the holidays I brought home cakes, red velvet with cream cheese, once a German chocolate from the bakery near my office. I handed it to Margaret, who looked over the top of the box and said, "Let's not make things too sweet this year." You know Maddie's cutting carbs. I helped decorate the tree. I adjusted the ribbons. I wrapped gifts I didn't choose and tied names to tags I wasn't addressed by. When I suggested we take a weekend trip together somewhere quiet, even just the lake, I printed out brochures and folded them carefully into a manila envelope. I left it on the kitchen counter with a sticky note. Just a thought, maybe sometime in spring. It stayed unopened for 3 days, then disappeared. No one brought it up. Maddie posted a photo that week with the caption, "Finally catching a break solo trip to Santa Barbara." I didn't ask where the envelope went. Every month, I transferred money to the shared account. I didn't check the balance. I didn't request a statement. I only kept a spreadsheet tucked into the corner of my drive, labeled in lowercase tracking Claire, contrib.kslsx. It wasn't password protected. When I mentioned once that I'd like my name on the deed if we ever formalized the purchase, Margaret didn't look up from her coffee. Her mug had a lipstick mark on the rim. "You really shouldn't make this difficult for your sister." I stirred mine in silence. It had gone lukewarm. The spoon tapped against the ceramic once. I set it down without tasting it. The towel I once embroidered by hand still hung in the garage draped over an old cooler we no longer used. I had stitched each name with the same colour thread, Margaret, Madeline, Claire. The last letter of mine had unravelled. A single loop hung from the E, twisted like it had tried to hold on too long. Once I tried to repair it. I brought the towel inside and laid it across my lap. I re-threaded the needle, looped the cotton twice, then folded it up again before I began. I didn't know where to start. The next morning it was back in the garage. I asked Margaret once offhandedly if she still wanted me to help with the renovation fund. She was slicing apples. "If you're keeping track, Claire, maybe it's better you stop contributing. This isn't a ledger. She dropped the slices into a bowl, wiped her hands, and walked out before I could reply. That was the last time I asked anything directly. Even when James called to talk over family logistics, his voice moved quickly, as if trying not to get caught in one place too long. We're trying to keep things practical. Too many cooks, you know. I was not a cook. I was not in the kitchen. I was not asked what I thought we needed. There were weeks I told myself I must have missed something, that maybe I'd misheard, misread, misunderstood, that it was just a phase, a stress, a busy season, that Margaret meant to reply, that Maddie was going to loop me in. I tried so hard to be reasonable, I forgot I could be real. Even now, I can picture the spreadsheet, every cell filled with the same quiet hope. This matters. Even now, I can still hear Margaret's voice so calm, it could have passed for kindness. You always make things heavier than they are. That sentence used to echo. Now, it just lands and stays. There's a box I never unpacked after the last move. Inside it, receipts, photos, a souvenir spoon from a place we never went. The towel is there too, folded, unfinished, frayed. The needle still stuck through the hem like a question no one asked for an answer to. I haven't taken it out in a long time, but I know exactly where it sits. And I've stopped wondering if anyone remembers the name that came last. I still do. Sometimes it takes longer to realize you've been left out than it does to be forgotten. I still have the silver ring Eleanor gave me. It fits slightly loose on my index finger, which she always said was better than too tight. Some things need space to stay yours. The inside is faintly inscribed E-W, Saz, C-E. The initials never rubbed off, though the band has dulled in places. I wore it to my college graduation. Margaret arrived 40 minutes after the ceremony ended. The parking pass was still in her windshield, wrinkled and half torn. She handed me a bouquet carnations and dyed baby's breath. The plastic wrapping crinkled against my gown. The tag said, "Congratulations, University of Oregon." I had gone to Oregon State. She looked past the cap in my hand. It's the thought that counts. At least I made it. I nodded. Maddie was with her, holding an iced coffee. She wore a blazer too large for her frame, said she had an interview later. No one asked where we should go for lunch. They both walked ahead of me toward the car. That night, I ate leftover cake alone. The frosting had slid to one side inside the box. My name had been spelled with a K. Each Christmas since then, a card arrived from the Whitman house. One of those photo collages with forced smiles and matching sweaters. Maddie on the front, Margaret beside her, arms folded with the kind of precision that reads like pride. No envelope ever had my name. I mentioned it once. Margaret didn't flinch. "We thought you wouldn't want mail coming to that apartment. You move around so much." I had lived at the same address for 5 years, in a box labeled personal. Keep. I keep the only card that ever arrived with just my name on it. It's from Grace, my father's sister. One sentence written in blue ink. "You don't owe them noise to be known." She never signed it. She didn't need to. There was a Sunday morning, sometime in late spring, when a local paper did a small feature on my team at work. I was quoted once, nothing grand. My photo was cropped beside a line about young women in systems design. I emailed the article to Margaret. She didn't reply. 3 days later, I saw she had shared it on her social media. Her caption, "Proud to see women stepping up. Maddie's always been the most dependable one." My name wasn't tagged. The photo wasn't mine. I remember staring at the screen, wondering if I should comment. I didn't. There's a photograph taped to the inside of a cabinet I rarely open. It shows the four of us, Margaret, Maddie, James, and me, at Maddie's high school graduation. I'm barely in frame, standing at the edge of the stage stairs. My arm is cropped out. No one's facing me. No one's hand is touching mine. I tried to adjust the tape once, pull it straight, so the corner wouldn't curl. The image tore slightly near my shoulder. The edge folded back without resistance. I never replaced it. In another drawer, I found the tag from a dress I bought but never wore. It had been for Maddie's engagement dinner, which I learned about through someone else's story post. I folded the tag, wrote the date on it, and tucked it beside the ring Eleanor gave me. I don't know why I kept it. Margaret used to tell people I was good at staying out of the way. Her voice always light when she said it, like it was a compliment I should be proud of. Claire's always been so independent, never needed anyone to look after her. She said it once in front of Caleb during the summer barbecue. I remember, because his eyes shifted quickly to mine, then away again. Maddie needs more support. Claire prefers being in the background. No one contradicted her. I cleaned out an old box last week and found a brochure from a group trip Maddie took in college, something in Costa Rica. I had paid for part of it. The note she wrote at the time had hearts around my name and ended with, "You're the best." Seriously, there was no return gift. Years later, when I couldn't attend her graduation, she posted a photo of her class with the caption, "To those who mattered, you showed up." I looked for more photos from that day. None of them had me. None of them looked like anyone had noticed I wasn't there. I've stopped assuming people remember what I gave. They remember what they chose to give back. The ring still fits. I wear it when I'm doing dishes sometimes, watching the water catch in the dull curve of the silver. The inscription warms slightly under the skin. It never asks to be read aloud. Some names fade quickly, some just never make it to the card. Trust doesn't disappear all at once. It drains quietly like a leak you didn't know was beneath the floor. The email came late, flagged automatically by my account's notification settings. Large withdrawal alert, joint account ending in 04. I hadn't looked at that account in months. I used to check it weekly, then less and less, once it felt more like watching someone else's reflection than my own. The number blinked. 6 figures. Transfer completed. Beneficiary Whitman Fletcher Escrow. I logged in, hands still damp from rinsing a dish. The balance was nearly 0. The ledger showed deposits mostly mine, regular, quiet years in rhythm. And now gone. No memo. No name beside mine. No acknowledgement. At the bottom of the summary, one recurring line scheduled monthly contribution, Claire Whitman, Housing Fund. I opened the oldest statement on file. Scrolled back to the beginning. The first deposit was labelled for all of us, the second down payment prep. The third, simply house. In a drawer I hadn't opened in months, I found the white envelope. The flap was still sealed, though the edge had lifted with age. In my handwriting, down payment. Do not touch. The date marked the spring I skipped my raise celebration to max out the transfer. The seal had been split, cleanly, not torn, not hesitant. I called James. No answer. He replied by text 20 minutes later. "I think Margaret was going to mention it to you. Let me know if you need a copy of the contract." There was no preface, no apology, just the shape of a transaction treated like an errand. I asked whose names were listed on the deed. He didn't reply. 2 hours later, I opened Instagram. Maddie had posted a photo in front of a brick archway. Caleb held the keys between them. Margaret stood off to the side, a hand resting lightly on Maddie's shoulder. Her caption read, "Love deserves something beautiful." I scrolled through comments, hearts, sparkles, congratulations. One reply from Margaret, a fresh start for the right ones. Couldn't be happier. There was no mention of how, no whisper of where it came from. Just celebration, polished and public. I called Margaret. The phone rang once, then again. She picked up, breath measured. You don't need to make this uncomfortable. You've always been independent. Maddie needs somewhere safe to build her life. I didn't speak. You're not even living here anymore, Claire. You've chosen your own path. It's time to let go. I looked at the framed photo on my shelf, Eleanor, in her sun hat, one arm resting on the porch rail, her other hand clutching a small paper note. I hadn't read that note in years. I took it out of the drawer behind my desk, folded carefully, yellowing at the corners. Your name matters. Don't forget. I hadn't, but it seemed everyone else had. I printed out the full statement. I highlighted each deposit. I drew a line through the final withdrawal. There was no anger, just a kind of stillness I didn't recognize, like noticing your signature missing from something you created and realizing no one ever meant to include it. I opened the spreadsheet I used to update tab, labeled House Fund, Claire. It was still color-coded. The goal was marked in bold. Next to it, in a smaller font I barely remembered typing, goal reached soon. There was a margin note from months earlier, after escrow request joint title confirmation. I closed the file. I didn't save changes. Margaret used to end her calls with the same phrase even when nothing needed resolving. We all make choices, Claire. Some people build, some people complicate. I used to think she meant I was cautious, careful, considered. Now, I wasn't sure she had ever meant me at all. The ring Eleanor gave me was still cool against my hand. I turned it once slow. The engraving faced my palm. I didn't message Maddie. I didn't ask for an explanation or a gesture or a thread of recognition. She had posted a reel that afternoon, a tour of the new living room, the caption littered with interior tags and filtered light. Caleb's voice laughed in the background. No one tagged me. I went back to the email. I marked it unread. I took a screenshot of the account summary and filed it under a folder named Silent Record. In the kitchen drawer beneath the old warranty slips was a stack of unused labels. I peeled one off and wrote in small, even letters, no longer mine. I stuck it to the now empty folder I once called Joint. There was no need to raise a voice. They'd already erased mine with a single click. And I had learned sometimes the cleanest theft is the one no one calls by name. The first sound I removed was my own. I turned off notifications from the family group. Then I left it. Not with a goodbye or a clever line, just settings. Tap confirm. The space went quiet before anyone noticed. I untagged myself from old posts, birthday dinners, awkward holiday snapshots, a blurry photo of Maddie's graduation where I was cropped on the edge holding someone else's jacket. My name disappeared from the captions as easily as it had never been typed. The frame on my bookshelf held the last photo that included me. I had been the one to take it, set the timer, and stand behind Maddie, just in time for the flash. I looked like a guest at someone else's party. I slid it from the frame and tucked it behind a drawer. The glass left faint lines on the image. I stared at the key in my wallet for a long time. The spare to the Whitman house. It had been flattened over time by receipts and owned loyalty cards. I turned it in my fingers until the numbers faded beneath my thumb. The garage hadn't changed. Same dusty pine smell. Same flickering light string Maddie had once begged me to hang. My boxes were stacked neatly in the far corner. No one had moved them. One box was labelled in black marker Claire. Winter. Inside I found the mug with the green glaze chipped on one side, a scarf Eleanor knit when I left for college, and a small terracotta pot painted with blue lines that never quite met at the corners. The lavender inside had long dried, but the roots held together like memory pressed flat. I carried the pot to the car and set it on the passenger seat. I wrote nothing on the envelope. I slipped the house key inside and left it in the metal box by the front door. No ceremony, no closure. Margaret arrived just as I closed the latch. She didn't look surprised. Her heels clicked on the concrete like punctuation. This isn't necessary. I kept my eyes forward. You're not being fair to Maddie. You know how sensitive she is. She stepped closer, arms folded. You're overreacting. I wish you wouldn't make a scene over something so logistical. I looked at the pot in my hands. A small crack ran down one side now. I didn't know if it had been there before or if it had happened in the move. This isn't how grown women behave, Claire. You always need everything to feel equal. I stepped around her. The scent of her perfume clung to the still air between us. Sharp citrusy, the kind she wore only at brunch or funerals. You're blowing this up for attention. It's unbecoming. The car door shut behind me like a sentence closing. I didn't speed. I didn't turn on the radio. Just the soft hum of air moving over windows. The same roads I had taken 1,000 times, school pickups, grocery runs, dentist appointments. The only thing that felt different was how little I looked for landmarks. I passed the tree Eleanor once tied a ribbon around after my first solo drive. She'd said it was a superstition. Or maybe it was just her way of giving the road permission to let me go. At the red light near the corner store, I turned the old keychain over in my palm. Tarnished metal, etched faintly. My first home. I bought it the year I got my second raise. I'd meant to use it for the house we were all going to build together. It had never touched a key. In the rear view, the terracotta pot tilted slightly, soil shifting inside. I reached back at the next stop sign and righted it without looking. The apartment door opened with a sound too soft to be heard. I placed the pot by the window. The sun hit the rim, casting a short, quiet shadow. There was an unopened letter on the counter from James. The envelope was thick, legal. I didn't tear it. I didn't write back. I opened the drawer where I kept things I didn't want to lose, but didn't need to carry old IDs, expired insurance cards, my college lanyard. I added the keychain. It made a soft thud against the plastic. I took a cloth and wiped the dust off the table's slow circles until the edge disappeared. I folded the towel and placed it back under the pot. The room held the same stillness it always had. Nothing changed in the furniture, only in what I no longer waited for. Margaret once stood in my doorway years ago, looking at the wall where my certificates were pinned. You should take those down. They look like you're still trying to prove something. I hadn't argued. I had just pressed the corners flatter. Now I didn't press anything. Some exits don't require slamming doors or final words. Just the quiet removal of your name from a place it was never meant to stay. Peace doesn't announce itself. It just stops needing permission. The apartment had low ceilings and one window that opened crookedly. I had to wedge a folded coaster under the pane to keep it from sliding shut. The light that came through was filtered by a neighboring building, soft, grey, steady. It reminded me of the light that used to come into Eleanor's kitchen in late afternoon, touching only the rim of the sink. I unpacked in sections, not with intention, just motion. The top drawer held 3 forks, 2 spoons, a knife with a nick near the handle. I lined it with plain paper and didn't cut it to size. The edges curled slightly where they didn't fit. The kettle was the first thing I bought. Not online, not from a list, just something I saw on a shelf near the back of a hardware store. Pale enamel, a small dent at the base, the whistle missing. It suited me. I boiled water and poured it into the mug with the faded glaze, the one with the handle that didn't match. I sat at the bare counter and watched the steam rise in a single thread before breaking apart. The apartment was neither furnished nor empty. It was simply mine. The noise of the world sat at the edge of the walls and didn't come in. The lavender plant had survived the move, though it leaned sideways now. I trimmed the browned ends, swept the dry petals into my palm, and scattered them in the sink. The roots held on. A few new shoots pushed from the middle, almost invisible, unless I leaned close. The walls were bare. I hadn't decided what should live on them. 2 boxes remained sealed in the corner, one labelled papers. Private, the other winter clothes. I didn't rush to open either. The silence didn't ask for hurry. I folded the kitchen towel 3 times, then once more. I placed it under the bowl I'd chipped last year, but never threw away. There was no drawer full of better options now. Just that one. I wore Eleanor's cardigan around the apartment. The fabric was thinning at the elbows. 1 button was missing. It held her scent faintly in the collar lavender and starch, like something meant to last. I didn't turn on music. I didn't plug in the old speaker. There was nothing I wanted covered up. I washed my clothes by hand that first week. Not because I had to, but because I needed something quiet to do. The rhythm of rinsing and wringing became familiar. I hung them on a plastic line by the window. They dried unevenly, corners curling seams, twisting slightly. But they were clean. The mail was light, mostly offers, circulars, a reminder about registering for utilities. No handwriting, no names I knew. I opened each envelope carefully, flattened them, after reading, stacked them in a drawer. Margaret's number stayed saved in my phone. I didn't block it. I didn't look for it, either. No messages came. Maddie's posts still surfaced now and then. Someone tagged her at a rooftop brunch, smiling beside Caleb, the sun catching the edge of her glass. "Still can't believe we're finally home." The caption was beneath a filtered shot of the living room. I recognized the throw blanket I'd bought her when she moved to college. Pale blue fringe worn down, my initials stitched faintly in one corner. I didn't comment. I muted the tag. My screen returned to black before I let myself count how many things in the photo once belonged to me. There was a voice in my head. I hadn't heard in a long time, Margaret's from a memory I hadn't invited. You always need everything labelled Claire. It's exhausting. Not everything is about having a name on it. I opened the drawer and ran my finger over the label I had placed there, Claire. Utensils. I had written it in pencil, not marker. I sat on the floor beside the window, knees drawn in cardigan sleeves rolled halfway. The lavender's shadow stretched out beside me, thin and certain. That night I made toast for dinner. I had no toaster, just a pan and some butter. It burned slightly. I ate it anyway, standing. No plate. The box labelled papers. Private remained unopened. I rested the pot of lavender on top of it. A placeholder. The kettle cooled. I wiped the counter with a dry cloth, folding the edges under with my fingers. I didn't check the time. I didn't count how many days it had been since anyone used my name. I looked around and saw no proof that I had ever belonged somewhere else, only evidence that I was beginning to belong here. The mug sat empty on the counter. The chip at the rim caught a line of shadow. I didn't turn it away. Not everything needed to be repaired. Some things just needed room to stay what they were. I've come to recognize the sound of your obligation dressed as care. It always arrives too late and too direct. The phone lit up at 6:12 p.m. I didn't move for the first 3 rings. Margaret Whitman blinked like an old warning light. I answered without speaking. "You should come to the wedding," she began, her voice firmer than it needed to be. "Maddie's big day is close, and we want the family to look whole." That was the word she chose. Not together, not united, just whole, like a staged backdrop, needed patching. "I know you have feelings, but this isn't the time." Her breath caught slightly on the word feelings, as if saying it cost her something, as if it wasn't a debt. I didn't reply. She didn't wait. The call ended with a click I'd heard before. 5 minutes later, Rachel Connors sent a text. "We're making a slideshow for Maddie. Got any childhood pics?" Something cute. No greeting, no signature. Just a request like I was a storage unit they'd left unmonitored. I opened my old photo archive. The folders were unevenly named Fall, 2007, Summer Camp M. I found one where Maddie and I stood near a tree, her arm around my waist, my smile faint and out of focus. The caption read, "Backyard pre-dawn move." I remembered that day. I'd spent the morning hauling her boxes while Mom took photos. No one asked me to be in them. I closed the folder without selecting anything. That evening, another message came. James Whitman this time. Just a subject line, legal docs, time sensitive. The PDF was clean and wordless, like all his documents, a title transfer adjustment, something about retroactive signature for clarity of ownership. My name had been inserted just once at the bottom, under a blank labeled prior contributor, no longer active. The signature line was already marked with a pale grey arrow. He'd written beneath only for the records. No drama needed. No drama. I stared at the arrow until the blinking cursor beneath it disappeared. Then I closed the file without saving. In my voicemail box, a new clip waited from Lena. Her voice hadn't changed. "I hope you're doing okay," she said, as if the words had been sitting in her throat for weeks. I didn't want to pick sides. It's just, with everything going on, the timing's bad. I'm trying not to get caught up in family tension. She paused. "We're still good, right?" "Still good." I replayed it once, then deleted it without answering. The silence after her voice faded lasted longer than I expected. Later that week, a wedding website went live. I wasn't tagged in the post, but someone forwarded the link. The banner read, "From the beginning, it was always us." Gold letters on a pale pink background, photos of Maddie and Caleb laughing beside vineyards under string lights in borrowed coats meant to look candid. There was no mention of anyone else, no section called Our Journey, no siblings acknowledged, no family photo that included me. I checked my inbox one last time. An automated message sat unread. Event QR code, RSVP by July 30th. There was no greeting, no personal line, just a scan square and the line "You've been selected to attend." Not invited. Selected. In the back drawer of my desk was a card I wrote Maddie last spring. It was simple, pale green with embossed vines. Inside I'd written, "You're going to do more than fine. You already have." I'd meant to send it the week she got her new job. I never did. Next to it sat a folded piece of paper, Eleanor's letter, the one she gave me in her last month, written with a fountain pen that bled at the loops. One line was underlined twice in her handwriting. "You don't need a seat at their table to know you belong in this world." I held it up to the light. The paper was beginning to yellow. The wedding registry showed a blender, a vacuum, and a custom housewarming plaque. The Rhodes family, since 2025. I recognized the address. It was the same house I'd once helped clean out on weekends while Maddie studied. A final message came the next morning, this time from Mom again. You need to be reasonable. Maddie deserves a peaceful day. Don't complicate it with old wounds. There was no signature, no request to talk, just the soft blade of dismissal sharpened by time. I stared at the phone until it dimmed, then turned it face down on the table. The lavender by the window had leaned toward the light again. One leaf cracked slightly where the sun had pressed too hard, but it hadn't fallen. I picked up the ceramic mug chipped on one edge and poured a slow stream of tea. No sugar, no cream, just mine. I didn't look at the screen again. I always notice when the silence feels earned. The store opens slowly, like an old book with a spine that resists at first. My name isn't on the sign outside, but my hours are steady. Tuesdays, Thursdays, some Saturdays when Lisa can't make it in. The register sticks on the number 7. The receipts curl when left too long. I've come to like the way things resist change. Here. Small things honest about what they are. The kettle at the back counter hisses once, then quiets. I bring my own mug now. It's heavier than most deep green chipped along the rim. Lisa asked once why I don't get a new one. I told her this one fits my hand. That was enough. Last week, I rearranged the poetry shelf. The names I kept are the ones I've read cover to cover, not the ones people say they admire, just the ones that stayed. There's a kind of dignity in curating your own quiet. The basil on the windowsill leans slightly right. I rotate it every other day, not to fix it, just to give it a new view. Beside it sits the lavender. It bloomed this week, faint, soft-edged, like it didn't need permission. Caleb's name showed up on my phone again this morning. No message this time. Just a call. I waited for it to go to voicemail. I listened once, then deleted it. Then it rang again. This time I picked up. I wanted to just touch base, he began. About the wedding. It might look strange, you know, if you're not there. Maddie's worried how it'll come across. There was a pause. Then, we're trying to keep things smooth, not dramatic. I stirred honey into my tea with the back of a pencil. Claire, it would help if you could show up. Just for the photos, maybe I won't be attending. That was all I said. He didn't speak again. The call ended itself. Later, I opened the old file box, the one I kept sealed since the move. It still smelled faintly of mothballs and lemon cleaner. Inside were the records people usually keep, the kind that prove existence. Diplomas, contracts, award slips from places no one remembered anymore. I sifted through them slowly, not out of nostalgia, just sorting. The high school award for outstanding peer collaboration, I put it in the discard pile. The internship photo at Marston Corp. 3 of us, me in the middle, holding the final report. I didn't remember who took it. Into the discard pile, a small envelope with my first direct deposit stub. I traced the name on the check mine and set it aside. Near the bottom, I found a faded sticky note. Don't forget, interview at 9:30. My own handwriting. Slanted quick, as if I still needed to remind myself I had somewhere to be. I kept that one. Not because it mattered, but because it did once. The last item was a printout of an old email. My acceptance into the graduate program I never started. Subject line, congratulations. No body, just a name and a header and the silence that came after I declined. I placed everything I didn't need into a new box. Plain cardboard, no label. I sealed it with tape and placed it in the closet's highest shelf. I didn't write memories or archives on the side. just left it blank. An email pinged while I made dinner. Rachel again. This time shorter. Need RSVP final. Please respond. No greeting, no closing. I moved it to trash. The next day, a physical envelope arrived in the mail. Return address printed no handwriting. Inside the wedding invite, matte, cream serif font, names embossed. Claire Whitman printed at the bottom like a placeholder. The RSVP card included a QR code, no option for a personal note. I turned it over. Blank on the back. On the shelf by my kitchen window sits the lavender, taller now petals opening like they trust the sun again. I hadn't expected it to bloom. When I first brought it home, one root was blackened. I clipped it off and hoped that would be enough. There's a cardigan draped over the back of the chair, worn thin at the elbows, soft with years of being held. It still smells like Eleanor's soap, faint and clean. I wear it in the mornings when I water the plants, and again when the wind slips through the frame near the kitchen. Last night I made soup from scratch, chopped the vegetables by hand, watched the water cloud with starch, added rosemary without measuring. I ate it with a cloth napkin folded into a square, not because it was fancy, but because it felt deliberate. I no longer scroll through their posts. I no longer wait for someone to notice. My name doesn't echo in those rooms anymore, and I don't ask it to. Somewhere in the closet beside the sealed box is an envelope with nothing inside. I found it while unpacking Too Pretty to Throw Away. On the front, in Eleanor's handwriting, not everything has to be returned. I keep it for the silence it holds. I always notice when the silence feels earned. The store opens slowly like an old book, with a spine that resists at first. My name isn't on the sign outside, but my hours are steady. Tuesdays, Thursdays, some Saturdays when Lisa can't make it in. The register sticks on the number 7. The receipts curl when left too long. I've come to like the way things resist change. Here, small things honest about what they are. The kettle at the back counter hisses once then quiets. I bring my own mug now. It's heavier than most deep green chipped along the rim. Lisa asked once why I don't get a new one. I told her this one fits my hand. That was enough. Last week I rearranged the poetry shelf. The names I kept are the ones I've read cover to cover. Not the ones people say they admire, just the ones that stayed. There's a kind of dignity in curating your own quiet. The basil on the windowsill leans slightly right. I rotate it every other day, not to fix it, just to give it a new view. Beside it sits the lavender. It bloomed this week, faint, soft-edged, like it didn't need permission. Caleb's name showed up on my phone again this morning. No message this time. Just a call. I waited for it to go to voicemail. I listened once, then deleted it. Then it rang again. This time, I picked up. I wanted to just touch base, he began. About the wedding. It might look strange, you know, if you're not there. Maddie's worried how it'll come across. There was a pause. Then, we're trying to keep things smooth, not dramatic. I stirred honey into my tea with the back of a pencil. Claire, it would help if you could show up. Just for the photos, maybe I won't be attending. That was all I said. He didn't speak again. The call ended itself. Later, I opened the old file box, the one I kept sealed since the move. It still smelled faintly of mothballs and lemon cleaner. Inside were the records people usually keep, the kind that prove existence. Diplomas, contracts, award slips from places no one remembered anymore. I sifted through them slowly. Not out of nostalgia, just sorting. The high school award for outstanding peer collaboration, I put it in the discard pile. The internship photo at Marston Corp. 3 of us, me in the middle, holding the final report. I didn't remember who took it. Into the discard pile. A small envelope with my first direct deposit stub. I traced the name on the check mine and set it aside. Near the bottom, I found a faded sticky note. Don't forget. Interview at 9:30. My own handwriting. Slanted quick as if I still needed to remind myself I had somewhere to be. I kept that one. Not because it mattered, but because it did once. The last item was a printout of an old email. My acceptance into the graduate program I never started. Subject line, congratulations. No body, just a name and a header, and the silence that came after, I declined. I placed everything I didn't need into a new box, plain cardboard, no labels. I sealed it with tape and placed it in the closet's highest shelf. I didn't write memories or archives on the side, just left it blank. An email pinged while I made dinner. Rachel again, this time shorter. Need RSVP final. Please respond. No greeting, no closing. I moved it to trash. The next day, a physical envelope arrived in the mail. Return address printed no handwriting. Inside, there'd the wedding invite. Matte, cream serif, font names embossed. Claire Whitman printed at the bottom like a placeholder. The RSVP card included a QR code. No option for a personal note. I turned it over. Blank on the back. On the shelf by my kitchen window sits the lavender, taller now, petals opening like they trust the sun again. I hadn't expected it to bloom. When I first brought it home, one root was blackened. I clipped it off and hoped that would be enough. There's a cardigan draped over the back of the chair, worn thin at the elbows, soft with years of being held. It still smells like Eleanor's soap, faint and clean. I wear it in the mornings when I water the plants, and again when the wind slips through the frame near the kitchen. Last night I made soup from scratch, chopped the vegetables by hand, watched the water cloud with starch-added rosemary without measuring. I ate it with a cloth napkin folded into a square, not because it was fancy, but because it felt deliberate. I no longer scroll through their posts. I no longer wait for someone to notice. My name doesn't echo in those rooms anymore, and I don't ask it to. Somewhere in the closet beside the sealed box is an envelope with nothing inside. I found it while unpacking, too pretty to throw away. On the front, in Eleanor's handwriting, not everything has to be returned. I keep it for the silence it holds. Some things feel lighter once you decide not to carry them anymore. I folded the letter 3 times, not because it needed to be neat, but because that was the habit, 3 equal creases, sharp edges, no room left for uncertainty. The paper held only a few lines, no greeting, no signature flourish. Just the essentials. I release my name from any future use. I relinquish ties to assets, claims, inheritance appearances. I will not represent what does not recognize me. No apology, no bitterness. I used the pen Eleanor once gave me, navy lacquer initials worn down from years of being thumbed open. Beside the letter, I placed a copy of the final page from her will, her handwriting still intact. For Claire, I leave what cannot be bought, her own name and her right to use it as she sees fit. The original remained locked in my drawer. This one, a copy enough for them. I sealed the envelope and set it beside the box with the silver ring. It had dulled to a quiet grey, the kind of metal that no longer sought attention. Eleanor had given it to me with a small nod, and the words, "When the place is yours, not just where you stay." I had kept it too long after that stopped being true. The return address I wrote on the back wasn't mine. Just the name of the post office. Let it circle, once then land. I didn't need to track where it went. I walked there, not to prove a point, just because the day was still. The clerk didn't look at me when I slid the box across the counter. He weighed it, stamped it, set it aside. I left before he asked if I needed a receipt. On the way back, I passed a second-hand store I hadn't noticed before. Inside by the window, a row of wooden frames leaned against a shelf. I stepped in. No small talk. Just scanned until I found one simple walnut, no glass slightly uneven on one side. I picked it up, turned it over, checked the backing. It would hold. That night, I took out the photo, the only one where it was just her and me, no one else's arm draped in front, no shadows on my face, no crop marks where someone had trimmed me out of the frame. I'd kept it in a drawer behind utility bills, like it might disappear if left unguarded. In the picture, she was looking at me, not the camera. My hair was tucked behind one ear, her hand resting near my shoulder. It wasn't posed. Just caught. I placed it in the frame, pressed the tabs down gently, and set it upright on the shelf beside the lavender. The petals had begun to pale their first bloom, fading into the softer, truer colour they hold when they settle. The next morning, a message from James blinked on my screen. No subject line. Understood. Documents received. Maddie and Caleb will proceed without complication. Mother, thanks you for your discretion. I didn't reply. Another ping. Rachel, could you at least send one photo, even if you're not in it? Maybe something Maddie could use for context, followed by, you're still part of this whether you like it or not. I archived the thread. A letter arrived later that week. Thin envelope, embossed initials. Margaret's writing, elegant, deliberate. While I acknowledge your decision, I hope you'll reflect on the consequences of absence. Families rely on mutual sacrifice. Your detachment has caused difficulty. It's not too late to demonstrate support in a dignified way. No signature, just a single postscript. Remember who raised you. I folded it once, placed it under the kettle to flatten. Then I threw it away. On the table near the window, I laid out a blank sheet of paper. No lines. Clean. I wrote my name once in the middle. Not as a form, not as a heading, just the name itself. No titles, no roles, no relation. I looked at it for a long time. There was nothing to correct. The house key sat on the counter, still on the same keychain I'd had since college. Brass tarnished one corner, slightly bent. I left it there. Not to be found. Just not to be taken with me. That evening, I wrapped the cardigan tighter around my arms, even though the air wasn't cold. I turned the lights off in the hallway, let the quiet arrive without resistance. The only sound was the kettle, warming soft and consistent. I poured the water, not rushing. I drank from the chipped mug. I looked again at the photo of us, just her and me. I didn't say her name out loud. I didn't need to. And I didn't wonder if anyone noticed I was gone. I've stopped reaching for explanations that no one asked me for. The kettle let out a soft click. I didn't rush. The ceramic handle stayed warm beneath my palm, and the steam rose just enough to blur the edge of the window above the sink. I pressed the cloth under it, not to clean, just to hold it in place. I didn't look at the time. The curtains hung unevenly. I had cut the fabric myself from an old dress I found in the thrift store clearance bin. One panel still carried a faint imprint of a coffee stain, shaped like a comma. I kept that part on the inside. Outside, the garbage truck rolled by without pause. The children from the next building passed by my door in pear-zipped coats and half-finished breakfast bars. Their chatter moved like weather. It didn't reach me. I didn't step out. On the table, a mug with a chipped rim sat over the coaster I had stitched from leftover quilt scraps. I poured tea. The edge of the liquid rippled as I set the pot down, a quiet reminder that even stillness holds motion if you look closely enough. The lavender by the window leaned toward the light. Just one stalk had bloomed, pale, persistent. I hadn't moved the pot since I brought it here. I liked the way it angled without instruction. The envelope lay where I left it last night, creased soft at the corners, not sealed. I had written the final line without thinking too hard. I wish you well. But I no longer wait at your gate. No salutation, no signature. I slid it into the drawer beneath the placemats. That was enough. Not sending it didn't take anything away. I hadn't spoken to anyone since Thursday. There was no reason to. The group chat was still active, I assumed. I had muted it months ago. The last thing I remembered seeing was a poll titled Signature Cocktail Ideas for the reception beneath a photo of Maddie holding a champagne flute with a strawberry slice on the rim. The caption read, "Whitman women always do it with grace." I kept my hands on the cup, not lifting it yet. My fingerprints had started to show faintly in the steam against the ceramic. The glaze had thinned where the crack ran near the base. It never leaked. Some things don't need repair if they know how to hold anyway. The letter from Eleanor sat folded near the bookshelf. She'd written it on lined paper from a church bulletin pad, the kind that left faint ink smudges if you pressed too hard. One line stayed with me more than the rest. You don't have to be loud to be whole. She never raised her voice, not once, but when she told me to save receipts and keep my own name on everything, I listened. That kind of silence echoed. There was a stack of blank paper beside the chair. On the top sheet I had written only one word. No title, no heading, no family crest, just Claire. Below that I hadn't continued. I didn't think about the wedding, whether it had happened yet or who cried or what toast was made in the name of legacy. I didn't open the event link. I had deleted the QR code. The key sat on the counter. It belonged to the house that no longer listed me in any drawer or closet. I hadn't taken it with me when I moved. I found it later in a coat pocket and pressed into the seam. I left it out now, not because I needed it, but because I didn't. There were still pictures in one of the storage boxes, wrapped in soft t-shirts and kitchen towels. I didn't unbox them. The only photo I kept in view was one of Eleanor and me taken when I was 10. We stood in her garden with our backs to the camera, both holding watering cans. She had drawn a heart in the soil with the tip of her spade. The photo had no caption, no frame. I tucked it behind the salt tin on the top shelf. The air in the apartment carried faint traces of lavender and lemon peel. I had simmered a pot last night with citrus rinds and cloves. No recipe, just warmth. No one knew my schedule now. I opened the bookstore 3 days a week. The rest I filled with errands or walking the long back path behind the community center. I bought groceries in cash. I made soup in small batches. I reread the same book twice last month, underlining different sentences each time. No one asked me what I was doing with my life. No one needed an update. I didn't owe a shape to anyone else's idea of return. The kettle still had warmth. I refilled the cup without thinking. I had once tried to make sense of their choices by rearranging my own. I don't do that anymore. I don't need forgiveness like a key. I don't need their table, their captions, their mirrored versions of me. I kept the curtains open. The light slanted in just right. The chipped mug warmed my hands. The lavender held its lean toward the window. And I stayed.